A cartoon that first aired in 1989 has shocked people with how often it seems to predict the future. The Simpsons has shown events years before they actually happened, from Donald Trump becoming president to the invention of smartwatches and video calls. Even sporting victories have been mirrored in real life. But what unsettles people most are the predictions that seem to match our present and even suggest what could happen in the near future, including warnings about 2026 that hint at chaos, AI rebellion, and economic collapse. The writers insist it's just comedy, but the details feel too close to reality to ignore. One example comes from 1994, when an episode showed the school lunch lady using meat labeled assorted horse parts. It was meant to be a joke, but in 2013, Europe faced a real scandal when food sold as beef was discovered to contain horse meat. Supermarkets pulled products off shelves, and the public was outraged. Suddenly, what was once a silly cartoon moment felt eerily real. Another strange case appeared in 1990 when Bart caught a three-eyed fish near Springfield's nuclear plant. Years later, in 2011, a fisherman in Argentina found a real three-eyed fish near a nuclear facility. Photos shocked the public, and more unusual fish were reported afterward. While scientists didn't directly blame radiation, the cartoon's storyline and real-life discovery seemed almost identical, making many wonder if The Simpsons had once again seen the future. In 1994, The Simpsons poked fun at technology with the Apple Newton, an early digital assistant. When a character tried to write "beat up Martin," the device auto-corrected it to "eat up Martha." The gag mocked bad handwriting recognition, but years later, autocorrect on smartphones became a daily frustration for millions. Even Apple engineers admitted they remembered that joke while developing the iPhone. Almost 3 decades later, people still laugh and complain when their messages are changed into something ridiculous, proving how spot on that moment was. The show also explored censorship in a 1990 episode where citizens tried to cover Michelangelo's statue of David because of its nudity. At the time, it was satire, but in 2016, a replica of the statue in Russia sparked a nearly identical debate. Some demanded it be covered, and a petition was even started. Just like in the show, the public ended up deciding to keep it as it was, showing how art and censorship still clash in the real world. One of the most unbelievable predictions came from 2010, when Homer and Marge joined the U.S. curling team at the Winter Olympics and won gold against Sweden. It seemed like a ridiculous scenario since the U.S. had barely made an impact in curling before. But in 2018, the U.S. men's curling team shocked the world by doing exactly that, beating Sweden for the gold medal. Fans couldn't believe how closely the real event matched the cartoon episode. The Simpsons even touched on corruption in international football. In 2014, they released an episode showing FIFA as a corrupt organization with officials being arrested. A year later, in 2015, a massive scandal broke out, and top FIFA officials were arrested for corruption and bribery, just like in the episode. Over and over, moments that started as jokes on The Simpsons have lined up with real-life events years later. Some call it coincidence, others think it's sharp social commentary, but many are convinced there's something more mysterious about the show's ability to mirror the future so precisely. Real life eventually caught up to The Simpsons in ways no one expected. When the FBI and IRS launched a huge investigation into FIFA, the world saw corruption on a scale few had imagined. Officials were arrested in Zurich, and dozens of powerful figures faced charges of bribery, money laundering, and racketeering. News headlines were brutal, and fans around the globe were stunned to see the world's most famous football organization dragged into court. People couldn't help but remember the Simpsons episode that had shown FIFA officials being arrested long before it really happened. The resemblance was uncanny. The same episode had another eerie twist. It showed Germany winning the World Cup. While the cartoon had Germany defeating Brazil in the final, real life wasn't far off. In 2014, Germany humiliated Brazil 7-1 in one of the most shocking matches in football history before going on to beat Argentina in the final and becoming world champions. The details weren't identical, but the outcome matched the show. Once again, The Simpsons seemed to have pulled a storyline right out of the future. In 2012, Another moment of strange foresight appeared in the episode Politically Inept with Homer Simpson. While Homer ranted on a news show, a ticker at the bottom of the screen joked, "Europe puts Greece on eBay." At the time, it was nothing more than a quick laugh. But just 3 years later, Greece defaulted on a major debt payment to the International Monetary Fund, becoming the first developed country to ever do so. Families faced unemployment, strict austerity, and financial chaos. Greece wasn't literally for sale, but the country was on the brink of collapse, and the cartoon's throwaway line suddenly felt chillingly accurate. One of the most shocking coincidences came from a 1998 episode where Homer, trying to become an inventor, wrote equations on a chalkboard. Hidden in the messy math was a formula that looked close to predicting the mass of the Higgs boson, sometimes called the God particle. Scientists didn't confirm its existence until 2012, nearly 14 years later. The discovery earned a Nobel Prize, but The Simpsons had scribbled a version of it years before. The writers explained that one of them had a physics background, yet the accuracy was still remarkable. Even pop culture wasn't safe from these predictions. In 2012, Lisa Goes Gaga showed Lady Gaga flying over Springfield attached to cables, wearing a glittery outfit. It was meant to exaggerate her theatrical performances. But in 2017, at the Super Bowl halftime show, Gaga descended from the roof on cables in a glittery costume, almost exactly like the cartoon. The resemblance was so strong that Gaga herself admitted it gave her chills. Then there was the 2007 Simpsons movie. In one scene, Marge reassures Lisa that the government doesn't spy on everyone, only for the camera to cut to a massive surveillance facility where agents are listening to private conversations. It was a joke at the time. But 6 years later, Edward Snowden revealed the NSA's massive spying program that collected data from millions of people. Suddenly, the joke wasn't funny. It was reality, and it had been hidden in plain sight years earlier in a cartoon. In 2006, an episode showed Homer in a one-person submarine that malfunctioned deep underwater, leaving him stuck and running out of oxygen before being rescued. It was just a gag about Homer's bad luck. But in 2023, the Titan submersible disaster shocked the world when 5 people died during a dive to the Titanic wreck. Fans immediately drew comparisons to the Simpsons episode. Small subs, communication problems, and life-or-death tension. Unlike the show, real life had no happy ending. Even Homer's get-rich-quick scheme sometimes came true. In a 1998 episode, he tried stealing and selling used cooking grease for profit. It seemed absurd, but by the late 2000s, grease theft became a real crime. Used oil became valuable as a raw material for biofuels, and thieves across the US began siphoning it from restaurants at night. Something that once seemed like a ridiculous cartoon scam turned out to be a real black market trade. From football scandals to debt crises, from physics equations to biofuel theft, The Simpsons has shown again and again that its jokes sometimes mirror reality with disturbing accuracy. Fans debate whether it's pure coincidence, sharp satire, or something stranger, but one thing is certain. Time after time, the cartoon has been years ahead of the news. Restaurants once treated used fryer oil as worthless trash, throwing it out in dumpsters behind their kitchens. But thieves soon discovered its hidden value. By 2008, reports surfaced of people sneaking into alleys at night to siphon grease from fast food chains and diners. The New York Times even told the story of a man who stole 300 gallons of oil from a Burger King. What sounded like a ridiculous crime was costing real businesses money. By the 2010s, grease theft had exploded into a black market industry worth up to $75 million a year. Police began calling them grease bandits, and what started as a throwaway Simpsons joke had suddenly come true in reality. Homer's silly money-making scheme had turned into a real-world criminal operation. Years later, the show would capture something even stranger: the rise of virtual reality. In an episode from 2016, Mr. Burns used a headset to create his own artificial family. He became so addicted that he didn't want to deal with real people anymore. Another episode from the year 2000 showed Bart as a miserable adult, hiding from his problems with a VR visor. At the time, it was all science fiction. Today, it's our world. By the mid-2020s, VR and AR had become mainstream. From gaming to business meetings, millions of people were spending more time in digital spaces than in real life. Apple, Meta, and Sony released advanced headsets that made virtual worlds more immersive than ever. Studies soon warned that VR overuse could lead to addiction, isolation, and even mental health struggles. Marge's reminder not to forget the real world feels less like a joke and more like advice we desperately need as we move toward 2026. The show also touched on the dangers of robots long before it was a real conversation. In 1994, the family visited Itchy and Scratchy Land, a parody of Disneyland. The park's robot characters suddenly went haywire and attacked the guests. Homer's line, "Nothing can possibly go wrong," became a grim punchline as chaos unfolded. At the time, it was just a parody of science fiction. But decades later, with AI robots driving cars, writing essays, and even playing sports, that warning looks eerily relevant. In 2023, a chess-playing robot crushed a child's finger by accident during a tournament. It wasn't a cartoon gag. It was a reminder that technology doesn't always behave the way we expect. The Simpsons even hinted at global food problems before they became a worldwide concern. In the 1995 episode Lisa the Vegetarian, Lisa decides to give up meat after bonding with a lamb at a petting zoo. The story seemed like a simple tale about a young girl making a personal choice, but today it feels much bigger. Scientists now warn that raising animals for food uses massive amounts of water, land, and energy, while also adding to climate change. At the same time, food prices are climbing and shortages are being reported in different parts of the world. The quiet moment when Apu shows Lisa his rooftop garden now feels like a prophecy, urging us to grow more of our own food and rethink how we eat. For decades, The Simpsons has been a comedy built on wild gags and outrageous plots. But hidden in those jokes were glimpses of the future, sometimes frighteningly accurate ones. From black market grease and robot takeovers to virtual reality addiction and global food crises, the cartoon has mirrored real life in ways no one expected. Back in the 90s, these stories were entertainment. Now they're starting to look like warnings.